Your destination is on the left.
Molly. But it's so awesome, and this is what we're talking about. You know, when we stay in these campgrounds, is when we post the notices. Come on out, get a spot, hang out. Here's Corin. You say your name, Corin.
Victoria.
Yes, we know. We met you last night. Thurman here, as I like to call her. It's but I'll call her Victoria. She is so far. Although we've had some really great. That's Chad skiing in the background. Say hi, Chad.
Hey guys.
We've had some great support along the way with people coming out to the campsites and also offering us some rides and stuff like that, which she did too. Mm-hmm. But my buddy Steve McQueen, whose interview you've already seen, if we release them in order. If you haven't seen it, then this is out of order and she's first. That said, he loaned us his wife's car. I don't know if she was happy about that or not, but she seemed happy about it. And Vic came down, and she's staying at the KOA here in Nashville, which I would say was costly.
Yes.
But hopefully worth it?
Yes.
Okay, good. So she's been hanging out with us all day. She went on some adventures with us. We went and had a bite to eat. How was that salad?
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
Was it?
Yes.
What was in it?
Avocados.
What was in it? Ah, avocados.
And I shared mine.
She did. She gave me half of an avocado. She wanted to give me a whole half of an avocado, but I asked for a half of the avocado.
And then I was secretly glad that I didn't, that you didn't take the whole thing.
I know you were. So it was great. She showed up yesterday. We hung out last night. Hung out here around the campsite and just chilled. It was fun.
Sort of chilled.
Well, no, sweated. we schwitzed. We schwitzed all night.
Yes. But it was fun.
It was fun. It was a really good time. And you even had a tiny little hint of what's it called, Chad? The
apple pie.
Apple pie. But it's a mead. A mead.
Like a mead.
Yes.
Like a mead.
She even had a tiny bit of apple pie mead,
Yes,
which was quite tasty, wasn't it?
Very good, but then you had to pick me up from under the table.
Well, we've had a really good time, and this is kind of what the thesis sort of was on part of this whole experiment that we're doing, was also being able to not just obviously do interviews in person like this, but hang out and spend some time and just socialize. You know what I mean? Get out of our heads for a little bit. So
Can I interrupt?
you can anytime you want. Please do.
There are two things that I need to give you.
What?
One,
No.
a hug from Lori.
Oh, was that from Lori?
Yes.
Lori, she gave me your hug. Better be happy.
And two, a hug from Jody.
Jody? Okay,
Yes.
Jody, that's your hug. Did you feel it? Anybody else?
No, sorry.
How about a hug for everybody else?
Okay.
This is it for everybody else. That's for all the rest of you. And thank you so
And-
much.
oh, wait.
That's so sweet. Oh, wait.
That's from Christina.
Oh yes, Christina. I got the poke. Our first victim. Is that the Christina we're talking about? The same one? Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
Yes.
We are now Twitter BFFs.
It took me a tiny bit of convincing to get her to do. We were tit for tat on the interview thing, but she came through with flying colors, and I know you will too.
Hopefully.
I know you will. And she was wearing a Love America Tour shirt earlier.
That is
but
drenched.
both of us were dressed differently earlier, so this was a two-shower day.
I actually had to go down the street to the gas station and get a souvenir T-shirt because I didn't pack enough T-shirts because I didn't know it was going to be like this.
It's been brutal here. Well, from what my friend Steve told me, that when you drive by this particular area, it sits in kind of a little bit of a bowl in a way,
course.
and then it's surrounded by nothing but concrete and all that with the Grand Ole Opry and all these places. So it's just the heat index right here is insane. But we did hear some thunder a little while ago, which was nice. That said, let me find out more about you.
Okay.
Where are you from? Where were you born?
I'm an Austinite. I was born at Seton Hospital in Austin, Texas.
Really? Oh.
And my mom said all the nuns thought I was a beautiful baby.
I'm sure you were. You got any pictures?
Not not with me.
Dang it. And how long did you live in Austin for?
A year. So because my dad was getting his PhD at the University of Austin, and they were there a year before, but I wasn't. We moved in summer of 71.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. It's odd. Quite a number of the people that I've interviewed moved within the first 1 to 3 years of wherever they were born. You know, it's kind of interesting.
I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, because I did as well as a child.
I'm like, I don't know anything about Texas or Austin.
Right.
And, yet, I've been told about it my whole life.
Have you never been back?
Victoria, if you're famous, they will claim you in a heartbeat.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, even if you just breathed a little there, you know.
I've driven through the northern part. I visited Cadillac Ranch on my way out to Colorado.
Cadillac Ranch is up in the Panhandle.
Amarillo, I think.
That's not. Well, that wouldn't be the northern. Oh, you mean the northern part of Texas?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I thought you meant the northern part of Austin.
That's the only part of Texas that I have returned to.
Gotcha. Well, you know, it's tough to get through Texas if you're driving through it. The Panhandle's the best place to go because it's about an 8-hour drive instead of a 15, 16, hour drive. So when you moved out of Texas, where'd you end up?
Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Nice. That's not where Chapel Hill sausage is from, is it?
I don't know anything about that, so no. My dad was teaching at the University of North Carolina.
Oh, really? What did he teach?
English. So, that's why I'm named Victoria Louise Thurman, after the Queen. And she has a daughter named Louise.
So you're named after British aristocracy.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to talk to your father about this. We fought a war against them. No, I'm kidding. It is a beautiful name though. I like it. When you got when you got there, so you moved straight from Austin to
North Carolina.
To North Carolina, and did you stay there for the whole duration of your schooling?
No, 2 years. So my parents got married. They moved to Williamsburg. My dad taught a year at William and Mary, and they had their first child. I think they were there for 3 years, and then they moved to Texas so he could get his PhD. Then they moved to North Carolina, and they had Jennifer. They had Catherine and me in Texas.
Yes, gotcha.
And then my dad got a job at a college that could offer tenure, so we moved to Americus, Georgia, and that is where my first memory ever, because I was 3, driving into the driveway, and then it's a brick ranch house. It was all echoey, like all the walls were pine. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I had another tick on me. I was like, ah! Sorry. Go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt.
Everything echoed. That's my first memory.
So, yeah, around 3 years, I have odd memories from very early on as well, even earlier than 3. But Georgia was your first home then, really, from memory's sake.
So we lived there for 20 years.
20 years.
My brother was born there, and when he graduated high school.
How many more kids are getting born before we finish this conversation?
That's it.
Busy parents.
Yeah. But at one of my birthday parties, one of my friends said, "Your parents had sex 5 times." Really?
You were like, well, I'd say on the odds.
I think we were 5 years old.
5 out of 5, if that's the case. I mean, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good score.
She was like, "Wow."
So silly. Oh my gosh.
And here ends this.
And no. It's great. My daughter actually, she got her master's in English, and she's waiting to look to where to get her PhD, so she can actually teach as well, like her father. So that's really cool. We have a thing there.
The University of Texas.
Yeah, she's in North Carolina now. She got married, and her beau is a military guy. So, which for some reason I just like. It just gives me a warm, cuddly feeling for some reason.
Well, good.
My
dad
I love
was
our military.
in the Air Force.
Was he?
For 3 years.
Well,
he doesn't like to claim it because he says I was a pencil pusher, and I don't really deserve the credit as being a veteran, but I feel like he does.
Hey, look.
So shout out to my dad.
Exactly, and you don't realize back in the day, you had to use those little hand, drills for your pencil. You do that all day long. He must have had forearms like Popeye.
I'm sure he did more than sharpen pencils.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did. What'd your mom do?
She taught school.
As well?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Well, like elementary.
Okay, and just general teaching kind of thing, like in learning how to.
Yeah, I think it was just general.
Yeah. I don't know what. I don't know
I
what.
get it wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's 7 different stories to that. 7 different ways of saying that story.
Lord, let's stick to one. So both your parents were academics.
Yes.
On different levels, and I think that's very important.
My mom graduated from the University of Michigan.
Really? Okay. Was she born up there in that area?
She was born in Manchester, New Hampshire, and then they moved to Peterborough.
Gotcha. Okay.
So she grew up in Peterborough.
Which part of Georgia were you in again?
Americus, Georgia. It's
Americus.
10 miles away from Plains. So I was there through the whole
You've
Jimmy
just named,
Carter
you've just named,
stuff.
yeah, but you've just named 2 places that no one's ever heard of. You're like, it's Americus,
Well, that's why-
Georgia, 10 miles
that's
from
why I
Plains.
mentioned
People are like,
the other
10
person that
miles?
nobody's ever heard of, Jimmy Carter.
Who? Yes, Jimmy Carter, one of the least the least exciting presidents we've had. Not even any good scandals, really. It's
Right.
like he even wasted his time there. But some people like him. I read his book on the settlement for like Palestine and all that. Like he wrote a book about
I
how
read
to.
his Christmas in Plains book. Does that count?
I should have read that. Instead. Actually, but he wrote a good book not that many years ago.
He teaches Sunday school. Well, he does every now and then now, but it's always packed. But I went there one time in the 80s to see him.
Well, I lived in Georgia as well. I moved from Atlanta. I moved from Arkansas to Georgia and lived in Atlanta. It was Sandy Springs, Georgia. For
I know where that
most of my youth from 2nd grade until 7th grade.
Oh, cool.
I was there in Sandy Springs, and I remember when I was a little kid. I used to do an imitation of Jimmy Carter all the time. He was like my favorite person to imitate for some weird reason. I have no idea. And all my imitation was all about boiled peanuts and stuff.
Hilarious. I don't even think I knew who Jimmy Carter was when I was in.
My mom was very.
And I lived there.
Yeah, my mom was a bit into politics. She was the classic.
I do remember at the college, our property. Sorry.
No, do it.
Butted up against the lake. That
Yeah.
was the college lake. My dad would walk to work every day, so we lived right behind the college.
Oh, that's great.
But I remember when they let the Iran hostages free, there were yellow ribbons wrapped around almost all the trees along the campus.
But they held off on that until the Reagan-Bush administration. They kind of did a backroom deal. They'd go like, "Hold on, don't give Carter the credit for that. You just hang on to those people another couple of months, and then we'll take the credit, and it'll be like, woo."
I think I was in 4th or 5th grade, so I don't know, but I just remember seeing the ribbons.
Yeah. 4th or 5th grade. Wait a minute. Yeah, that sounds about right. When you were growing up there, did you go to public school or did you go
Public
to?
school.
Yeah.
Oh, I hated it.
How was it? Were you in a smaller community?
12,000 people, I think, was the population of our town.
That's pretty small. That's pretty small. What was it like growing up there?
Fine. My friends, we used to bike ride all across town. So she lived close to the high school, and I lived close to the college, and we'd meet at the railroad tracks in between, and then we'd ride our bikes all around her side of town because she had all the hills.
Right. All right. And how exciting was it when you were like, okay, I'm going on a mission. We're going on. I got bike ride time.
So much
fun, right? What can you imagine life back then without a bike?
No.
I was one of those kids that my mom couldn't afford a bike
Oh, no.
for us. No. And I went for a lot of those really, really important bike riding years running after my friends or standing on like riding on the front of the handlebars on my friend's bike, whatever. And then finally this kid had moved out of our apartment complex who was a bit older, and his mom, my mom were friends, and he had a second bike that he had got, and so he gave me his old Mongoose.
Yay.
And Mongooses were like the bike to have.
Oh,
so
cool.
I finally had a rad bike, and it was just on. I could do endos and all that stuff. But so growing up in a small town, though, what was your school experience like?
I hated almost every minute of it.
Why is that?
I liked kindergarten and college because I got to do art.
The same kind of art. You're like painting with your fingers. And
Oh yeah, I did finger painting in college. My professor loved it. It was when we had to do the nude figures.
Oh, right, sure.
He's like, it was a male. He was like, you need to be on this side of the room now. You've done this side of the room long enough. I'm like, I don't want to.
I'm assuming you were on the back side of the room for most of the part. He's like, we know what that is. It's like, look, we know what it all is. Why do we have to paint it?
I'm like, okay, if I have to be on this side, I'm doing finger painting.
That is so funny. That is so funny. I love it. But what was it about school in particular that you weren't into? Was it rough socially?
Maybe a little, but I had this teacher in 4th grade who I think she just had it out for the Burmans. And she failed me. She like made it so bad for me that like she taught like the highest level class, and I had been in the highest level up until that grade, and I was in that level for reading. So I was in her class for reading, but I was in the second highest for all the other stuff. And she made life so miserable for me in that I was in between classes. I had to go to the library. I mean, what's a kid going to do in the library but just not read what they're supposed to do? So then I fell back into this class.
Right.
And I had to go to a behavior disorder class in that year. And I had to step over the laps of all the talented and gifted kids to get to that class.
What?
Because their class met right in front of the door to in the library.
Sure.
And so you know how humiliating that was? Just because I hated school so much. I mean, that just made it even worse. I hate school. I hate school.
No, I can imagine. I can absolutely imagine. Let me prop this up just a tiny bit so it doesn't get too much of the noise on the table there.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. No, be you. Yeah, that must have been really rough. I don't really recall having a teacher that had it out for me per se. You know, I recall having some tough teachers, but not one that seemed to like, you know, really target me. You know, I had a principal that liked to do that.
Yeah.
But he had reason to, trust me. So did you have to repeat the grade?
No.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
I was very nervous to ask that question. I want to tell you. But still, how did that have a negative effect on you in school from that point forward a bit?
Yes.
A bit of a rebellious kind of chip on your shoulder?
Mm-hmm. We were all raised to be independent thinkers, and you know, the school wanted us to conform to their whatever, and all of us had problems because we were all independent thinkers.
Right.
We don't have to do that. Why should we have to do that?
I understand.
Yes.
So what did that do in terms of your relationship with your parents, with school, social scene? Not really. I mean, was there stresses there because you weren't really applying yourself?
Yes. I have recently discovered some old journals from my junior and senior years where I was getting in trouble for not doing my homework. You would have hated me.
No, my
I know you're strict about get your work done first and then you can go play.
I wish it was that easy. My daughter was an angel. My son is an angel as well, but he's an angel who hates homework.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. So I understand that the stresses that come with that from parenting, especially if you have two parents who are academics. Mm-hmm. They must have just been like, how can you not do your homework?
Oh, and I don't even know how I graduated, but I just assumed I'd go to college because parents did.
Right.
Why wouldn't I? But I didn't even look at college. I applied for a college 2 weeks before graduation, and it was like, if you have a heartbeat, you can get into school. So that's where I went.
Yeah. She swatted a little fly just in a little net, and she nailed it too, by the way.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, but what was it? I mean, during that time period, I understand that, you know, that, but what were you doing during that schooling time period to fill your time if you weren't into the academic side of it? What was going on?
Daydreaming and writing
That's cool.
and art and reading and hanging out with friends.
That's great.
So in high school, my gay BFF moved in across the street,
Uh-huh.
and we spent practically every single day together. And he would come over at night and like throw a rock at the window, and I'd go out in the driveway and meet him, and we'd just hang out in the driveway.
That's awesome.
We would go for walks around the block. I mean, like, we walked every day, and we'd go like on. There's like dunes or hills and woods and hills in the back of it. It was all woods behind our house, and so we went back there sometimes. They had like the bike
trails.
and stuff.
Oh yeah, I love the woods.
We took a walk across the railroad tracks all the way out of the county. We didn't know we were going that far.
Did you get in trouble? Oh.
We were back by dinner.
Well, what was these gnats are getting crazy here. We'll work through it though. But what kept you out of trouble though? Because it sounds like you were just kind of into some cool stuff and everything, and not like going that rebellious route.
Oh my gosh, I never did anything against authority unless it was I didn't do my homework.
Right. Well, what was it? What was it that you think about when you think about yourself? What was it that just kept you away from making those kind of life decisions when you were already sort of flippant about school? You know, why wouldn't you, hang out with the dope smokers or go, hang out with the beer drinkers or all of that stuff and go,
Because our mom, she'd give you the look, and you know the look, and you don't want what comes after the look if you don't obey the look.
Understood. Was it were they religiously driven as academics, or were they were just discipline driven?
I mean, my dad's diehard Presbyterian USA.
Okay.
I have to say USA because it's it's not the Southern Baptist version.
Yes, I understand.
But I mean, I don't think it was a religious thing.
Gotcha.
I think it was just that they're both, like, my mom's a teacher. She wants order in the classroom.
For sure. Well, yeah, but staying out of trouble, that's a good thing, and you should be proud of that and making those decisions, even if you were
in 4th grade.
Oh, Scott's leaving. You can't see him, but Scott's going on a mission right now. Have fun. Oh, I wish I just had him on film. He made a hilarious face.
I didn't see it.
It was funny. So it was
4th
just
grade.
Yep.
Me and my friend decided to. I'm sorry, that wasn't proper English.
That's all
my
right.
friend and I.
We're not proper around here.
My dad will probably say something. My friend and I decided that we were going to cheat on the spelling test. I had never cheated. And I don't think she had either. And I think we just were doing it just to see what it was like.
Right.
And Phil at our table told on us. And so
Phil, jerk.
We sat in the back of the room. This was 4th grade when I had moved back into the 2nd level. We had to walk the walk of shame to the front of the room and put our name on the board with 2 checks beside it, which meant we did not get recess that week. And do you know, I had so much more fun not at recess because I hated recess. I hated being forced to go outside and play.
I was in a group in junior high, called the Donkey Squad, which was, this gnat will not leave me alone. The Donkey Squad was for all of the kids like you who weren't into PE and all of that. And we wouldn't dress out, we wouldn't wear, and so they would just make us sit on a bench the whole time. And I was a graffiti artist at the time, so I just sat there with my book hanging out with a bunch of gangbangers and other graffiti artists and stoners and just drawing graffiti and stuff. And I got A's and B's in PE.
That's hilarious.
It was hilarious.
You were so lucky.
Coach Pally, the Donkey Squad. Walter Reed Junior High. Awesome.
But I knew I have a reputation. I mean, like, I'm 10. I'm like,
right.
I need to uphold a reputation that's, not getting in trouble. So that's what I did. I made the decision.
It's interesting, though,
At 10.
Yeah. It is. No, it's interesting to make those kind of life-affirming, decisions at a young age is very intuitive. You know what I mean? It really says a lot about your character for sure. You know, even if school wasn't your bag, yeah, you know, it's not everybody's bag. You can always find a way. You know,
in algebra, because I was never good at math. And I don't even know how, and I might have passed with a D, I don't know, but I used to practice, my senior year in algebra, I used to practice my signature because I knew I'd be an artist and a writer one day, and I knew that, you know, algebra wasn't that important as far as that was.
And how's your signature?
I had better things to do. My signature is awesome.
Oh, well, I'm going to be the judge of that. I want to see this thing later. That being said, you know, not having the kind of rebellious streak that would lead you astray, but having a bit of that rebellious flavor in terms of being flippant about school and an artist and all of that. Did you have any ideas of your future at that time? What direction you wanted to be going?
I knew I wanted to write a book one day, and that was like the only thing. I mean, I even found it in my journal where it said, like, so Kevin and I, that's my gay BFF.
Yeah.
He was telling me about his dreams and like what he wanted to do before he died, and I didn't tell him what I wanted to do, but I wrote it in my journal that I just really want to write a book one day because I want people to enjoy what I have to say.
That's awesome. And were you actively writing quite a bit at that time? Obviously in your journal you were.
I wrote a novel when I was 13. It was the worst story ever.
What was the story?
Oh my gosh.
Let's hear
because
it
it was about my tragic life. It was called 13 the Unlucky or something like that.
That's right.
Well, I was born on a Wednesday, so it was either 13 the Unlucky or Wednesday's Child is Full of Woe.
You still have it?
Yes.
Oh, you have to put this thing out. You have to self-publish it. Lulu.com. It doesn't matter. It's so. I mean, it's such a great story because you in the prelude to it, you know, you can explain all of that.
Yeah.
You know, and then just let it be what it is from there on. You know, I think that's awesome. What did it feel like at that age to finish your first book?
It was amazing. I thought I was all that in a bag of chips.
You were. You absolutely were at 13 to do that. That is really rad. Because not many 13-year-olds are thinking along those lines at all.
Right.
You know. So when you went off to college then, what were you studying?
Okay, because I didn't do good in math, I was not able to declare a major until my next year because I had to take remedial math. And so I worked in the English department, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do an English major or an art major. And I thought, you know, you're really saying a lot about yourself that, you know, look at me, I'm a great artist. If you declare your art major art, I mean, that was my thought.
Absolutely.
But it's where my heart wanted to go, so that's what I did. And oh my gosh, it was an amazing experience.
Oh, it was? Okay, good.
Because
good.
I really wasn't that great of an artist.
Really?
But I learned a lot. I mean, I felt like I was one of the top people in our class.
By the end?
I did a stone sculpture.
What?
It's like 300 pounds. They saved it from a rock quarry in Atlanta it was going to go to the Tums factory. And I made a stone, a girl praying.
Do you still have it?
My parents have it.
That is
it's so heavy.
Cool. I can imagine. That is so cool, though. I mean, yeah, my mom was an artist as well. I mean, how far did you take it before work and bills came into play? Like, I mean, I know you still do your art and everything. But did you was there a time period when you had to make one of those hard decisions, like, do I get a job and make money, or do I keep pursuing the art until?
Well, I kind of freaked out. They don't have like business class, which I think they should. Business class in the art program, because you have to sell your art, so you got to know how to sell your art, and you can't depend on somebody else to sell your art. I sold 5 pieces out of 7. I was the first person in the senior show in like 5 years who had sold anything. Like, wow. I was like, oh my God, I sold 5 pieces out of 7 that I had in the show.
What were the pieces you sold?
So a stone sculpture that was a smaller version of, you know, it wasn't a girl.
So sculpting was kind of your main thing?
I loved it.
And do you still do it?
No. I gave my tools away to a local college because I haven't done it. I mean, like, I have no place to do it.
Yes,
So
I know.
one day when I get a house, get some tools and a block of stone, and I will go to it again.
What? So, wow. I mean, you know, selling that many pieces, and you know, when you're coming out of college and being one of the top students in the class, there wasn't some kind of avenue that, you know, to pursue that further at the time.
I mean, not that I saw, but this was like 92. We didn't really have the internet, so like I couldn't really see
Yeah.
what was out there. And I was so scared to death that I wouldn't have good ideas and that people would be paying me to have good ideas and that I would just flake out on them. And so I was really scared that I'd flake out and lose my job, so I just didn't do that.
Wow. Well, what choices did you make when you finished college and did you end up going back home to your parents?
No, I did. I was an art director for a Christian camp.
Okay. That's cool.
And that was a really, really, really bad experience.
Really? Oh my gosh, why? Well, I mean, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. It's fine, but
Yeah,
you can dance around it if you like. But
because I wanted to please God, so that kind of made me a people pleaser, and I did everything that, you know, I was asked to do, whatever. I lived
Right.
at this camp with just the director, his wife, and one other person, and I soon discovered that he was very manipulative and controlling and like mind controlling. He spied on me and just did a lot of scary things. And
Yeah.
I'll be nice to you up to a point, but when you start cutting into the core of me and my values, I'll come out of the corner fighting.
yeah.
And I knew I had to get out of there. I took their car and I drove 30 minutes away to a college and used the phone in the student center and called my parents and I said, please come get me in 2 days. They didn't even ask and I didn't tell them. And I had to go back and tell this person that I was leaving, and he looks me in the eye and says, I just think that you're really tired. Jesus loves you, Victoria. Jesus loves you. And I was like, holy crap, I'm going to have to tell him a second time. And I started crying because I had only mustered up enough energy to tell him that
Could
one
tell
time.
them the ones, yeah.
So I left and stayed up late packing, went first thing the next morning and told him. He tried to pull his little snake charmer eye trick on me again.
Right.
And I had told myself before I went over there to tell him again, Victoria, you have to cut off every emotion you ever felt and pretend that you don't care. He can call you every dirty name in the book and it doesn't matter because that's not true. And he tried. And he said, I'm taking you home. And I said, no, you're not. My parents are coming.
And did your parents have to be in the presence of this person?
We had to have tea and crumpets with them and picture taking before I could even leave the campus or whatever. I was not allowed to speak to anybody, you know. It was ridiculous.
But that was for the show. That was to try and make a show to anybody else that might be wondering if there's something going. Like everything's fine. Everything.
Because at that point, my parents didn't know anything about what had happened, and they put on a show. We're the most wonderful people in the world.
Oh my gosh, that is like insane. Making.
I went home. My dad used to do calligraphy, and we had this little. It was like a little mouse craft thing that had a clothespin in it, and he had an index card calligraphy, welcome home in calligraphy. I still have it in my Bible. I bawled my eyes out. I had lost 10 pounds, which put me back at 105, which I was concave. I had so many nosebleeds. I knew that if they had even asked me just to stand there and hand out silverware to the campers that summer, that I wouldn't have been able to do it. I was on the edge of a nervous breakdown. And I slept in for a month. I would get up and eat lunch and then go back to bed. And then for a month.
What?
I was exhausted.
Yeah, it was just, you know, I mean, what an oppressive environment to be in for you personally, you know, under that kind of witchery, you know.
And me being naive, thinking, oh, you know, I can go to church and nothing bad will ever happen to me. Well,
Right.
I was molested when I was 8 in the back of a church.
It's not.
And then the thing, and
And those two correlate, I'm sure.
they have to.
Yeah. Your honesty is brave, and I appreciate it. You know, because those subjects are so touchy, and many people have had similar experiences. I've had some sort of along those lines, but not to a degree that would be something that I would consider, you know, really detrimental to my, you know, my life. But how from 8 years old, I mean, was that always a secret for you? Did anybody ever know about that?
I told my parents after it happened. I mean, it wasn't like I was raped or anything. So it was like,
Gotcha.
I felt like, well, I can't say that that happened to me because, you know, it wasn't detrimental. So while the sermon was going on, he did the radio and he pulled me on his lap and he had it, you know, on mute, and he French kissed me, and I was always told to do everything, you know, obey the adults or whatever,
Right.
you know, like every child is, blah, blah, blah. Well, I told my parents about it after Sunday dinner because I knew something wasn't right. But their reaction, I think, was more a factor than what had happened, because I was told I am not allowed to sit with him in church anymore. He was like 83. Everybody called him the Candy Man. He always gave me chocolate and gave everybody else
The
peppermint.
candy, the people who hand out candy, man, forget it. There was, oof.
But they were like, you're not allowed to sit with him unless you're with a sibling.
Should be not at all, and they should have gone and dragged that 88-year-old man out of the church and kicked his ass down the street.
What I learned from that lesson, and I didn't say this to anybody because how would I have known to say this to anybody?
Of course.
No matter what anybody does to you in your whole life, you have to be nice to them to save their feelings. Oh, Victoria, his wife died last year, and you remind him of. I'm 8.
Wow. I know, it's insane. It's.
I know my parents did the best they could. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying it is what it is. But that was a huge factor in why I was caught up in the whole thing at that camp, and why I allowed that to happen, him to do that to me for a year, like to be.
Exactly.
horrible.
But that also, I can imagine also there must have been a disassociation a bit from 8 years old on, and a bit of a confusion too, because if you come clean with your close family members or whatever, and the reaction is brush it under the carpet, you know, instead of addressing it militantly, you know, that must have made you confused about the whole thing. You know, men, sexual dynamics, everything else. What does it mean? Who am I? Am I, you know, I mean, that must have been
Well,
tough.
I was scared that if I ever let anybody do one thing, then that was saying you have permission to do everything.
Right. And did that affect you being able to have like kind of normal boyfriend relationships when you were growing up? Kind of, you know, the 12-year-old, 13-year-old kind of
Oh, yeah, I
boyfriend,
didn't have
girlfriend?
that.
None of that? And no real dating in high school at all? Or?
Oh, I was in love with my gay BFF because I didn't know that he was gay.
Oh. Well, that's one way to find out.
Yes.
That's funny. Yeah, you're like, I finally found my love.
Oh, never mind. Oh yeah, it was pretty sad.
Well, at least you two weren't both in love with the same guy. That could have been a little more awkward. And then when you go out of that, when you were in college too, you know, what was, I mean, were you still kind of not interested in the romantic side of things?
I was,
and all
but
that,
because
or-
I was in the Christian group, everything was so, you're not allowed to touch anybody
Right.
type of thing. And
But in the
it was
meantime, you
just-
had had this experience
yeah.
when you were younger, and it's just like crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, in one more month, I will be done with 2 years of therapy. And I'm very, very, very proud of myself.
That's amazing.
It took me 20 years to find the right therapist. I went through 5. And this lady has been a godsend.
I'm so happy
She said,
for you.
Victoria, you have basically, because I said, I've been a nervous wreck even before that camp experience happened, and we discovered that. So what she told me was, a baby learns how safe they are in the world from their mother, and they carry that with them throughout the rest of their life. In the first year of their life,
Right.
That's when they learn. Well, the first year of my life, my mom and dad had 2 toddlers.
Uh-huh.
My dad's at work. My mom's, doing the house. She's got 2 toddlers and a newborn, and then they're moving in the next year.
Right.
I didn't get the attention that a baby should get in the first year,
Most don't anymore.
and so it affects. She said, basically, you've been living in a state of fight or flight your entire life.
That makes sense. That makes total sense to me.
Because I had to rely on myself. My mom told me that one time my aunt came over and she saw me playing by myself in the corner, and she said, well, what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just Victoria. She likes to be by herself.
That's wow. It makes sense to me because I know that it makes me think back. I reflect back on, well, wow, yeah. My mom and dad divorced when I was around 1 year old, and there was just so much busyness, so much going on, and certainly it makes sense to me. I get it. I totally get it. Well, after the experience that you had at that the horror show of a place, I mean, did it affect your artistic expression? Were you kind of shattered artistically at that point?
I wrote a lot. I did a group of friends and I did it the Artist Way, and so we did our morning pages.
Yeah, the Artist Way. It's great.
So I did that for a while just to kind of get all that out, and I did greeting cards.
That's cool.
And I stopped listening to Christian music because it brought back so many bad memories that I put on the oldies because I didn't experience anything back when those were. So I
Sure.
listened to the oldies for a long time because I just couldn't listen to anything else. It was too triggering.
I can imagine, and and it's those moments that are so unfortunate because you do have so many people who are wonderful, as they say, God-fearing Christians and all that, and you have so many great organizations that come out of church groups and everything, and then but you have those crazies out there who use and manipulate the dogma of the religion to get over on people, and that is
Victoria, don't tell anybody what I did to you. Okay.
Yeah, as soon as somebody says that, it's
Oh,
like, oh yeah, something's wrong. Yeah, don't tell anybody this. It's like, okay, all right. Let's see where this is going.
So my therapist said he's a pedophile, and even though you were not 6 and you were 23, it doesn't matter.
Right.
There's no difference. He found a victim and he used you.
Yeah, it was the same type of behavior of manipulation and grooming and mental mind games and all of that stuff. And because you said you've been through 5 therapists and everything, but when you went out of that situation, how did you feel? Were you comfortable telling your parents about it ever?
I told my parents everything. And then when I tried to tell, I didn't tell everybody everything, but I told a couple people, well, don't let this keep you from,
being a
trusting
believer
God
or
or whatever. I'm like, or don't let it break your relationship with God. I'm like, I have had a relationship with God since forever, and I will continue to.
Yeah.
And now I can look at it and think, because I wasn't in drugs and all that other stuff, how was life going to find me? It had to find me there. I learned so much from that. I didn't know that till the past year.
Wow. That's a lot of years, though.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of years to have been battling the inner demons of that experience.
A lot of crying.
Well, what did your parents back you on this one at least?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you didn't feel
We didn't,
like you were.
throw them under the bus or anything, but they supported me.
Yeah.
We
Well,
didn't
you were an
call them out.
Also, you were an adult at 23.
Yeah.
It's it's the same type of behavior and everything, but what happened wasn't illegal.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's tough to say, okay, let's go march down there
But
with
I
pitchforks
didn't
and.
say anything to his benefactors at the church. And he asked
I'm
me,
sure they
did
probably-
you tell anybody in your Bible study about this? I said, no.
Wow, it's so creepy.
They all thought he was a god. They all thought
Really?
so highly of him. And I,
Those kind of people who use their ego and charisma, charisma is a wicked tool, organic, what people when I look at it, what people call charisma, like some certain people whose lectures I listen to, Alan Watts or Manly P. Hall, those two are two of my favorite lecturers. They seem like they have a lot of charisma, but they're not using charisma. It just comes out of the organic nature of
Right.
their character. Charisma is something that people use to manipulate and get over on people, It's very, very dastardly. What after you came home with your parents and you kind of figured out whatever you could figure out at that time, what was the next step for you?
well, I moved. Well, I didn't move. I went up to Atlanta. One of my sisters was married and she lived up there, and so I went and stayed with them to see if I could find a job. I was so scared because of all the threats that had been made against me that he was my only reference. So I was too scared.
You're kidding me.
So I went back home and I lived there for 2 years.
Was that a big loss for you to have to go back home?
No, the first year was very healing because I found a
good.
group of people who actually had very similar religious experiences, and we all worked at the country club doing catering. It was very strange that we all had these, and it was all kind of different, but it was all basically the same. It was all we were just trying to heal from some kind of a religious oppression that had happened to us in the past.
Certainly. And was that an accidental coming together, or was there a group
was
that was organized
accidental.
for it? Yes,
It was
bizarre. How
organic.
bizarre
It
is
was
that?
amazing.
And that's one of those things where, a belief in a higher power and God and all that, how it acts through people, places, and events,
Well,
and that's incredible.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not
So,
interrupting at all.
Here's the thing that's the thread between me and Lamonte's story. So while I was at the country club, I met my best friend Penny and her nephew. He was living with them. He was from an abusive home. I think he was 11, and he would come in after school, and I would give him, set up snacks for him, give him tea. He loved whatever he loved. I would give to him because I felt like he needs something good in his life. And I moved away, and it was 11 years later I found out he had been in jail for shooting somebody. And
there's a right reason and a wrong reason to shoot somebody.
I knew his heart. He was such a smart and creative kid. It didn't surprise me where he ended up because of his past. But
Gotcha.
I was given his address. Penny was just like, you should write to him if you want to or whatever. And I was like, I don't know if I want to open that can of worms, because it was kind of a can of worms. And so I had made the decision, and then 2 weeks later, I'm getting stuff together to go to the post office, and I've got my hand on the doorknob, and something just told every fiber of my being, you need to write to him right now. And so I went and wrote him a letter, and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm sorry about the situation you're in. And I always thought that you were smart and creative, and I know you have a good heart. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm thinking of you, and I mailed it that day. 7 days later, I got a letter from him. I thought that you forgot all about me. We wrote each other, well, I wrote to him, he didn't write quite as faithfully, but I wrote to him every day for 7 months until he got out of jail. I was that angel. I did not know what the situation was, why, but this was like spirit. He told me 4 months later, he says, Victoria, I was in isolation that day for fighting, or I don't know if it had been like a week or whatever. And he said, that day, I was at the lowest I had ever felt. I didn't think that anybody in the whole world cared about me. And then I got your letter.
What?
Isn't that amazing?
Well, it's that you know, I'm a firm believer that the metaphysical universe is senior to the physical universe.
And you need to listen.
Yeah.
Because what if I hadn't listened?
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Yeah, because you were hearing the cry from the wilderness that was grabbing your heartstrings and saying, you must write him this letter, even though everybody else is throwing him under the bus.
I dropped everything on the floor and went and wrote him a letter. And I mean,
you heard his cries from isolation. It's unbelievable. I love it. I love it. What? So did you guys end up in a relationship when you got out?
Nope.
Also, I mean, that's what was that? Were you expecting a relationship or?
I wanted. I mean, yeah, he was 14 years younger, but who cares? And,
okay.
I think that he broke it off because I think he cared about me and didn't want me to worry about him, and he was still going to be under like house arrest and all that kind of stuff. And I think that he just didn't want to put me through that.
Sure.
And then 7 years later, I get a call from him. Hey, I think I'm going back to jail. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I said, I can write to you if you want me to. Yes, please, please, please. And then I cried the whole night. This was just, this whole thing was really, it's like really, really close to my heart. And I'm not really projecting like it is, but it really is.
I can see it.
I had to tell him, I can't write to you. Because after 7 years, I don't hear from you.
Yeah,
you want an emotional support booty call? No, thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to do that. It really hurt me to have to tell him that because I did care about him.
But you know what? It was important for your own
but
your
I was
own
very
sanity.
Proud of myself for having gotten the courage up and done it.
Exactly. And I mean, it's, you know, it's a wild arc. Your story. It's a wild arc for you to be so calm, cool, and collected as you are.
2 years of therapy.
Well, yeah, and so after that experience, I mean, what was? I mean, what was your thing towards romance, towards dating and all of that, or towards finding, you know, a love of your life or something? What was going on with you in that regards?
I kind of shut it down.
Yeah.
And decided that I'm going to work on me and do me stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I totally get that. I know a number of people, you know, my mom especially, you know, who was just like, it's just not worth it. You know, it's, you know, and at a certain point, you know, especially if, you know, unfortunately my mom, and if she was watching this, she knows it's true, you know, she didn't have the best taste in guys. So, you know what I mean? It's like, if you're rolling the dice, you know, in a seedy alley, or if you're rolling the dice up at the nice casino, you're going to have two different types of characters playing the game with you. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, I can understand withdrawing from it altogether, that dynamic. What were you doing that was bringing you happiness and joy and fulfillment?
I self-published my novel. So I started writing the novel when I was living at my parents' house in 1996. I woke up one morning, it was one of those spirit things. It was like the title was given to me, The Dating Dilemmas of Delilah Dunfield, about
That's such a great title.
24-year-old who's because my mom always told us all the good ones were gone by the time you're 25. And so she's 24, almost 25, and she's freaking out because she hasn't found one yet.
Right.
So basically it's my dating experiences or mishaps. And I wrote in it for 10 years, and I pitched it to a Random House editor, and
Mhm.
she was, because I was really good at the pitch, she's like, send the whole thing. I was like, oh my God. But when I started writing it, that was the year that Bridget Jones had been published, and it's like, nobody knew about that until 2000. But I was a part of that collective mindset of chick lit. That wasn't even a genre at the time. And by the time I pitched it, it was the most popular and competitive genre that mine didn't fit in there anymore. Mine was too like elementary.
Oh no.
And so in 2011, I decided to self-publish, and I think it was the best decision because that way it's my book and nobody's changing it.
Exactly. Congratulations on
Thank
finally
you.
doing that. I know what that's like, you know, and it's great that the technology has caught up, you know, and allowed artists who are ignored, shunned, or looked over by, you know, these big companies or whatever, you know, the people with the keys to the kingdom,
Yeah.
you know, to be able to just do it. You know, for me, publishing some of the stuff I've written it's never been about thinking that I'm going to make a fortune off of it. It's about doing it and putting it out there in the universe, because otherwise it's just going to sit on my shelf. It's useless. That's why you got to
Everybody
publish
who's
your
read it
13-year-old book.
Loves it.
Your book that you wrote at 13. You got to
Yeah.
publish that. You got to publish that.
I'm writing the sequel now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's great. How's it going?
I'm halfway.
Halfway through. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But I know it's not easy to balance that with, you know, with work and everything else. And
Now it should be easier. But
now it should be easier. I know.
I
Yeah.
lost my job to
I know.
COVID.
Yes, the COVID has taken many of people's jobs. That is for sure, and the whole situation. You know, we won't get into it, but it's an unfortunate situation for many. But in your late 20s, early 30s, I mean, what were you doing to survive? What was your job?
So I kicked myself out of my parents' house and I moved to Memphis because my gay BFF had a deli up there, and then that's the year that I lost his friendship. And I moved in with some strangers I didn't even know. They were like so sweet. So I met this couple. I met her at, I was a docent for the Titanic exhibit at the Pyramid, and this was 1997.
Right.
And she just invited me over for dinner, but that happened to be the same night that they kicked me out of the apartment.
Wow.
So,
Timing.
yeah. So I went over to the house and I was like, don't say anything, don't say anything. She opens the door, she's, hi, how are you? I'm like,
Oh no.
She's like, you come in. Her husband's a lawyer. They helped me figure things out, and they moved me into their son had moved out, and so she had like the empty nest syndrome. She's like, oh, here's Victoria, some strange girl we don't know, but we'll take her under our wings. They were so sweet. I stayed there for 6 months, and I'm like, what are you doing? Go home. So I went and lived with my sister in Atlanta, and then I got a job in Atlanta, and I worked for a corporation, technology, like they think they did software. I didn't even know how to turn the computer on. I mean, we didn't learn that stuff. I was like in the class that fell in between the cracks. Then they got bought out, so I learned from that experience never put pictures up or plants in on your desk, because you could be out the next day. You don't know.
True.
So then I got a job with another company that had an office in Denver, and that was my dream since I was 12, to move to Colorado.
Interesting.
And I knew that, okay, first thing I need to do is get on permanent. So I was with the temp agency. They were supposed to get me on permanent in 4 weeks. It ended up being 5 months. But in the meantime, I made friends with the admin out in Colorado, because I knew that she would know what was going on in the office. And so a week after I got hired on permanent, I was talking to her, hey, what are you doing? She said, I'm filling out college applications for Texas. And I jumped up and said, when are you leaving? And so I brought her into my little dream, because I hadn't told anybody, because this was just like a little seed and you don't tell anybody about it. And so I brought her into the dream, and then that Christmas, her boss was coming to our Christmas party, and I was in charge, so I sat us at the same table so he could go ahead and start loving me and want me to be his admin.
Right.
It worked like a charm.
Very good.
And a friend of mine that I grew up with had gotten married and moved out to Colorado in September, so I went to see her in February. First time I'd ever been in Colorado. I had never been there. I knew I wanted to be there though. And then April came around, and the the admin out there was just like, oh, we got to tell him now. So I was like, okay. So we both went at that same time, like her office and my office, and told our bosses what we wanted to. And my boss was like, how do you know she's leaving? Because we talk. And he came around the corner after. He said, well, I need to talk to her boss. So, okay. He came around the corner to tell me what was up, and he said, are you sure you want to do this? And for a split second, my whole body was just like, holy crap, it's real. You know, I'm going to be like so many states away from my family. And then I was just like, Victoria, you've been to Georgia, done Georgia, you have to go to Colorado.
Yeah, for sure.
They paid my way. They never paid for admins. They only paid for managers, and they paid my way out there. And
That's
so
amazing.
my parents took me. We had a huge trip out there. We stopped at all these places. That's where we went to Cadillac Ranch.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It was
That's
amazing.
so great. What a wonderful win to have in life at that point. And at that time, were the demons that you'd been struggling with, were they still knocking on the door, or it was still an issue?
Was, they were kind of like a little further back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were there, but I had this thing that I was working on, and I was not giving up on my dream, and that was my focus.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when you finally found the therapist that has given you the most help, let's say, what's it been like since you finally had the aha moment?
So the first year was really hard, and then there's something that parallels. Because I got an Indie Brag award for my book, I knew about their reading program, so I read books for Indie Brag to help determine whether they should get an award or not.
Okay.
And I had been reading fiction, but for some reason that 2 Januaries ago, I decided to read nonfiction, and I read nonfiction, and they just happened to all be books that were relating to my experience. And I finished one of the books at like 5 o'clock in the morning, August 22nd. And it was like every single cloak had been lifted off me, and I felt so light. I was like light and dizzy for a week, like literally.
Wow.
And I, for years, thought that low self-esteem and all those horrible things were me.
Right.
I didn't know it was something on me that I could take off.
Right.
And I had a vision that it was like me coming out of a long, dark tunnel, and I had bruises and scratches all over me, and I came out into this meadow, just beautiful flowers and a blue sky, and I stood there and I looked back, and I'm like, you were in that tunnel for 25 years, and you'd never had to be there that long.
Right.
But I didn't know.
Yeah, but we only know when we know, you know. Well, that being said, with your relationship with therapy and all of that, would you have any recommendations for anyone who's had traumatic experiences in their past, to maybe something you might be able to recommend that might help them make the kind of decisions that took you longer and longer to figure out, maybe to be able to collapse that time?
Yeah, I mean, like, because it wasn't like I was actively seeking a therapist. It took me years before I went to one, and she just wanted to hear my stories and would laugh. Oh, Victoria, you're so funny. I'm just like, what? I'm like seconds away from
traumatized,
killing myself, and you're laughing at me. Then there was another one who, you know, oh, well, you weren't raped, or you're not an abused wife, so, you know, I really can't, you know, sympathize with your story. So she's not the right one. And then there was another one that was just kind of watch the traffic outside the window.
Oh,
like,
wow.
She's not the right one.
Yeah.
And then when I found Linda, I mean, you just gotta don't think that the first therapist is the right therapist. Keep looking until you find the person who's actually going to do the work with you, because you need somebody to do the work with you.
Absolutely. And that, you know, closing on that, because I think it's a good spot to, because being willing to reach out and ask for the help that you need, and not being afraid to try different avenues or different people. So if you meet one therapist, like she said, if you meet one and they're garbage, don't think that all therapists are garbage. Try the next one, and don't be afraid to find that one that works for you and helps you out, you know, right?
Yep.
That sums it up.
And always pursue your dreams.
And always pursue your dreams. Thank you again so much.
You're welcome.
What is that?
I have a parting gift for you.
What? Can't wait to dig into that. I was hoping that I was going to get one of these.
Now you have to open it to see my signature.
Let's see just how good it is. Look at that. That is a very good signature. So this is The Dating Dilemmas of Delilah Dunfield. And this is a novel by Victoria L. Thurman. And you can purchase it where?
Amazon.
Amazon. I would highly recommend getting this.